We're talking wide receivers on today's Locked On 49ers. The rookie Cowing showing up big. We haven't seen a lot of Ricky Pearsall. What about Deebo, Aiyuk, 53-man roster projection? Who makes it at wide receiver for the San Francisco 49ers on today's Locked On 49ers?
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker, former NFL and AFL defensive back, Mr. Eric Crocker. He knows a lot about wide receivers, though, too, because he had to cover them. And so that's why we're going to talk about wide receivers today. I am Brian Peacock. If you're new here, please hit that subscribe button. We cover the 49ers daily here on Locked On 49ers. And we have a lot of fun doing it. And we're about a week out from the final rosters, Croc. So we're going to project who the wide receivers are that are going to make the roster for the 49ers on today's episode, which is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, Croc. We had a few conversations off the air and on the air yesterday, post-game, talking about the 49ers and wide receivers, and then got going, obviously Aiyuk's been a huge conversation. We're not talking about the Aiyuk contract or the Aiyuk, trade situation with the Pittsburgh Steelers or any of that today. I think we kind of know where that all stands right now, and we're still playing that waiting game, but want to project out the roster and talk about who the 49ers players are, who's involved here, and what skill sets are important for the 49ers to take into the season this year. And it was pretty clear watching the game on Sunday night that, first of all, we asked the question, and Kyle didn't really have a good answer. He was like, we wanted to get him a series. We were hoping it was going to be a long series, so it ended up being 2 short series. Then we got him out of there, and Brock wanted to play. And Greg Papa, I heard on KBR, said it was up to Brock. Brock said he wanted to play, and it's like, I don't know. Not that's not a good enough reason to throw Brock out there and get him hit behind that offensive line and not really have weapons he's probably going to be throwing to a lot.
Hold on. Okay. And no, we don't want to dive too much into that. We talked about that on the last episode, but I was listening to the Atlanta Falcons head coach, Raheem Morris.
Yep.
And if I'm not mistaken, is he the one that coached with Shanahan in Tampa Bay?
In Washington, yeah. So he was with all those guys in Washington, and then he was in Los Angeles most recently under McVay.
I feel like he was with anyways.
He was head coaching Tampa as well. But that was not with Kyle.
No, but I feel like they have some kind of other crossover. Hold on. Let me see. Now I gotta look at it. Yeah, Tampa Bay, 2002. And
that was like when Kyle was like a quality control or something.
Yeah, they were together. So he was with Tampa Bay 02, 03, 04, 05. Then he went to college. But they were together. So they kind of go way back. Anyways, guys that go way back and you adopt different philosophies. And sometimes they have similar philosophies, but obviously in time, things kind of change. And he talked about how he's not playing Michael Penix in the preseason and he's not playing Kirk Cousins. And he was on Up with Kay Adams, and he's talking about it. And she's like, why don't you want him to play? Like, do you not want there to be a quarterback controversy? And he's like, no, I'm secure with who our quarterback Kirk Cousins is, and I understand our situation. He was like, but we don't need the preseason reps, especially things can get a little weird. What group is he in? Is he going with the starting group? But why would you have him out there with the ones, but not have Kirk Cousins out there? So if he's not going to be with the ones, am I subjecting him to potentially getting hurt? And ultimately, that was his whole thing behind not playing someone he views as an asset, right? Like his quarterback, one of the most important players on the team. Why will I subject this guy to any more harm? Like, it's bad enough during the season, you're going to play, you're going to get hit. I'm not going to put him behind a line that's not suitable for him to be the best version of himself. So because of that, and I don't want these guys to get hurt, like, I'm just not going to play them. And it's just interesting to hear his philosophy and him explain it. But Kyle Shanahan be like, well, Brock said he wants to play, so I'm just going to roll him out there and play, even if I'm not comfortable with the weapons or the guys that are protecting them.
It's funny because I think they both got it wrong. I think they both have it backwards. Michael Penix is the backup. He should play with the backups, and he's a rookie, and he should get as many reps as he can. So in the future, when it's time for him to play, he should be ready to play. Who cares if he hurts himself? Kirk Cousins is your starter. Kirk Cousins is the one. And he's the one you don't want to get hurt right now today. The other guy, it's okay because even if he gets hurt, it's not a huge deal. There's a lot more benefits to him playing than the negatives to Michael Penix playing because he's a rookie. You want to get him reps. You want to get him playing. If it's like, shut down the entire sport if it's that, if it's like, oh my God, we've got a guy who's not going to play this year and we don't want him to get him hurt. That's asinine to me. It's like, shut down the entire sport if it's that. Like, it's not like he's your starter and he's not playing with the guys he's going to be playing with. Michael Penix is the backup. He should be playing with the backups. He should be out there getting reps. And on the other side of that, the reason that you don't start Kirk Cousins and the reason that you don't play Brock Purdy is because you don't want them behind the backups because they're not building the rapport with the guys they're going to even be playing with for the most part. And you don't want to get your starter hurt 3 weeks before the season starts. But if a guy that's not even going to be playing in 3 weeks anyways, and he's sitting and watching, this is one of the most useful times you can actually get full speed reps for a young quarterback. So I actually think both guys got it wrong. Hugh Morris, though, comes from LA most recently, and the Rams don't play anybody. And the Rams
he also talked about kind of simulating as much as he can live situations for his quarterbacks in practice where it's a little bit more controlled. So that was part of his answer. I know I kind of left that part out originally.
Right. No, and I get that. That's almost like they just don't want to participate in preseason. Like Raheem Morris is kind of almost saying, and this is kind of what Sean McVay has done, is like, I would just prefer to not have preseason games. So I'm going to throw the scrubs out there and that's it. And I'm going to we're going to get the important practice stuff is going to happen at practice. Right. That's kind of what he's saying. And I guess I get that. But I mean, to be honest with you, I think they should have flipped those. I think Purdy should have probably not played behind the backup left side of the offensive line with, wide receiver 5, 6, and 7 out there. And I think Penix probably as a rookie, and we've seen how it helps rookies to play a lot, right? And young quarterbacks need time and they need reps and they need to play. And to lose, some precious game time reps for your rookie quarterback seems kind of crazy to me. Who's a backup? You're not expecting him to start. You see Jaden Daniels out there. You see Caleb Williams out there.
Looking good, too. No, Bo Nix.
Patrick Mahomes out there throwing behind the back passes to Travis Kelce in the preseason. But you're not going to put Michael Penix out there?
Yeah. Bo Nix he's looked solid.
By the way, yeah, Bo Nix, he the first week was a little dink and dunky, but and I think that's maybe just Sean Payton wants the next group.
Easing him in a little bit.
Yeah. And that's kind of going to be the offense anyway. By the way, did you see who speaking of the starters, did you see who Patrick Mahomes' starter was at left tackle in their game?
Sua Mata'ia.
That was our guy in the pre-draft. The Niners traded down and let the Chiefs go get him. And Worthy making some plays as well for the Chiefs, the first rounder that the Chiefs jumped up in front of. I don't know if it was necessarily in front of the 49ers, but they did leap from behind the 49ers to in front of the 49ers for both those first two picks. It's something I'm going to definitely be following for a while with Worthy and Sua Mata'ia.
Would you trade Green right now straight up for Sua Mata'ia?
Yeah. Seeing that Sua Mata'ia has already won the left tackle job for the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, that's one of the most important guys in the NFL. You're protecting Patrick Mahomes' blind side. Because that was the thing. It was like, man, is he too raw? Is he going to be just a total disaster to start his career? Something like that. And the fact that he's not yet. And they're like, look, it's early still. And I like Green. Like the rule is hit on your picks. So it's not like if Green's good, you're not going to look back and be like, oh my God, they squandered this opportunity, the 49ers. But I'm going to take the tackle over the corner, probably. That's just me.
If they would have, let's say they drafted Ricky Pearsall, and then you said, you know what, we're going to bolster up this O-line. We're going to go Kingsley. Then we're going to go Dominique Pooney. How set would the 49ers be moving forward, right? And again, this is revisionist history. There's nothing we could do. They can't do anything about it. But you and I were talking about like, oh, Kingsley, Sua Mata'ia, like he's available. Like we liked him.
Yeah. High up.
So that's not even, this rookie that was drafted, around the same time as Green, maybe the 49ers could have had him. All the 49ers like, oh, look, he's starting at left tackle for Kansas City. Why didn't they go get him? Like that was a guy who we identified as, hey, 49ers, they need to grab this guy right now. He's available. And they went in a different direction.
It's hard to find young offensive tackles that have physical tools that you can project to be starters in the NFL. It's hard to find those guys in the draft. And that's
I think I know what the issue is. I think I know what the issue is.
What?
He's 21 years old. He didn't make the cut for the 49ers. Too young.
Yeah, he was 20. He was 20 when he was taking his last snaps at BYU.
49ers said, "Nah, you're not 25 years old." Like, nah.
And this is what's crazy about the draft. You start second guessing stuff and like the butterfly effect. What if they draft Suamataia in the second round? Well, now they got an offensive lineman. They probably don't take Pooney. So maybe they move up for the corner. Maybe they still get Green, but they don't get Pooney. And Pooney's looked awesome too. If you ask 49ers fans, they'd be like, "Nah, don't take away Pooney and Green. They look pretty good."
I gotta watch that movie again, The Butterfly Effect.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk wide receivers. Croc's got some notes on Deebo Samuel. Maybe a way that he could improve, or maybe he can't improve. Why is he the style of player he is? How does Brandon Aiyuk fit into all this? And who's going to make the 53 at wide receiver for San Francisco? Next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, and a special deal. And these are the types of things that make FanDuel America's #1 sportsbook. And we talk about them a lot. Something very special for all customers at FanDuel right now. A little different to start the season. And you football fans are going to want to listen up. All FanDuel customers now through September 22nd can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, which I already have, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook. Again, that is FanDuel.com/lockedon. All right, Croc. I feel like it's more likely that Brandon Aiyuk is going to stick around here. The latest report is like the 4th year of the contract's a little weird, and they're trying to figure that out. It sounds to me like maybe the 49ers are like, okay, do you want your agent to be able to tell Schefter, hey, they signed a 4-year deal worth $30 million a year. All right, fine. We're not going to change the first 3 years of the contract, but here's some funny business on the back end. And so I think that's kind of what they're still trying to figure out. The Niners are trying to make it look like it's 30, but it's still not 30. And so Aiyuk apparently still not happy about it. There was some report, I don't think it was really substantiated, that the offer was a 2nd and a 5th or something, or a 2nd and a late round pick from Pittsburgh, which is like, nah, that's a big no anyway. So yeah, maybe that's why we're exactly where we're at still, but still feels like better chance Aiyuk stays than goes, and probably has to happen this week because they got to get him ready for the season. And at some point, the Steelers are gonna be like, well, look, we got to go into the season with our guys too. So we got to either do this trade or not. And so I think that's probably going to happen over the course of the next week, maybe by cut down day on August 27th. But the skill sets of Aiyuk and Deebo seem to mesh perfectly for the San Francisco 49ers, right? You got the man beater, you got the zone beater. I think the EPA per play or yards per route run, I can't remember which metric it was for Aiyuk, was #1 in the NFL against man coverage. And Deebo's was #1 in the NFL against zone coverage. We know what Deebo can do after the catch. We know how Aiyuk can separate and how it all fits in. It looks great, and it's phenomenal. And obviously, they're wide receiver 1 and 2, however you want to call one guy 1, one guy 2, or 1A and 1B, whatever. I love how their skill sets mesh. But can they both even almost grow more alike in a way, Croc? Could Aiyuk still get better, a little bit more contested catch, a little even more after the catch, because he's got the athleticism to do it. We saw what it looked like in college. And speaking of college, can we see Deebo get a little looser with his routes? Can he start to look like a better, just true wide receiver, whether Aiyuk's here or not, and not be just a wide back, not just be a running back who plays outside?
You and I, and I sent you a clip. It was on, I don't know, MSNBC or something like that, and they showed Deebo Samuel. Here's the interesting thing. You watch the receiver coach, who I want to say is Leonard Hankerson, and he demonstrates what they're trying to do with their releases, right? You see him drop down. He kind of drops the hips. He goes left. He goes right. And you see kind of what he's trying to do, which I know as a defensive back, I understand what he's trying to get his receivers to do. You want to move the cornerback off of their spot, right? So anytime you have a cornerback that's lined up in front of you in press alignment, it's like, all right, I got to get outside of his frame to move him so I can maybe try to get him to open up that hip, maybe step a little bit too far one way, go back the other way. You want to get skinny and you want to, what they say, stack the defensive back. Like ideally, that's what you want to do at the line of scrimmage. So they're working indies. And I'm a big believer in indies do a great job of creating good habits as long as the players are replicating or duplicating what you're trying to do in indies. I do it every day with my defensive backs. We have our back pedals, we have our turnarounds, we have our shuffles and runs, we have our zero breaks, we have our 90 breaks, we have our 45-degree breaks, and everything that we do every day is to create good habits and movement skills. So a lot of my guys, they end up moving well doing it that way. Well, watch a Deebo Samuel. And you see, and again, I don't want to put too much into it. This is a pro NFL player. He's done it at a very high level for several years. But we have talked about how over the years he's moved closer to being a wide back as opposed to really the receiver he was coming out, who was a wide back, but he was wide first. Now he's more of a back wide. I think he's like more of a running back first with some of his ability. Like, if I had to ask the 49er fan base, who's a better route runner, Christian McCaffrey or Deebo Samuel? And we know that Christian McCaffrey had that kind of skill set coming out, but I think Christian McCaffrey could do what Deebo Samuel does. And you've kind of alluded to maybe prolonging the career of Christian McCaffrey by going more that route. But I think part of the reason why is when you watch Deebo Samuel go through certain drills. I pointed it out with one of his hype videos where he kind of runs a route, he catches the ball. And most of the time when you're watching receivers work on routes, off-season work, they run their route hard, they catch the ball, they knife back upfield, right? They're getting back upfield quick. Deebo catches it and just keeps going back towards the quarterback and tosses him the ball. It's like, oh, that's the end of this rep. And I'm just like, that's very interesting. Then you watch him in the indies, and again, it's indies. Don't want to take too much away from it, but we're seeing a guy who is struggling to beat man coverage. Like, that's a real thing. Cornerbacks, they line up in front of Deebo Samuel. He's not the most difficult guy. Matter of fact, I listened to a little bit, and I can't wait to watch more of it, but Diamador Lenore talk about how much better he got going up against Justin Jefferson and like challenging himself. And when we were at the 49ers camp and I'm watching Diamador Lenore go against Deebo, I'm like, I don't think Diamador Lenore should go with Deebo. And not because Deebo's just kicking his ass, but I don't think Deebo's challenging Diamador Lenore the way he needs to be challenged based on the receivers he's going to face throughout this season. And it's kind of a gauntlet. Well, Deebo, who already is struggling to beat man coverage and press, I watch him do his indies, and I'm like, well, that's why, because he kind of half-asses doing his individual work. And instead of mimicking what Hankerson did, which was drop his hips, move side to side, like he's trying to move a defensive back off of his spot, he is in one spot and kind of chops a few times and then just releases. And like that's not moving a defensive back at all. And that wasn't Deebo coming out of college. Like, that wasn't Deebo rookie year. Like, I can go back to his rookie year and watching him in the slot against a Kansas City Chiefs DB in the Super Bowl and how much he worked to get outside of his frame, then crossed over, caught the ball, drug him for another 8 yards. And it's like, dang, like, where is the guy that was focusing on that aspect of his game? So you talk about, are there areas where these guys can improve? I know for sure Deebo Samuel I'm not acting like I always watch this dude in individual drills, but I think if he took more of what they're showing him and really trying his hardest to do those things, he might be someone that is a little bit better at beating man coverage at this point in his career.
You think he's just tight-hipped? He's a few years older now. He's a physical guy. The way he's built, the way his body type is, that it's not going to happen? Or do you think it's something that he could work on and really get a lot better?
There's a saying, if you don't use it, you lose it. And I think, and I'll talk about myself, when I'm doing stuff with guys, there's certain things I could do and I still look good at doing it. And there's some things where hips just a little too tight for me to do this now, where I was more fluid, and I wasn't even the most fluid defensive back, but I was pretty good. Like, I was pretty fluid for the most part, relatively speaking, for a 6'1", 6'2" corner. But after a while, you do lose some of that. And I think he has kind of lost a little bit of that because he's not really focused on it, not really using it every day the way that he likely needs to.
I wouldn't trade it in for what he does well, though, either.
Not at all.
So I'm not.
I say all that to say I'm like, oh, struggles to beat man coverage, but it's like, well, the one trick, if you want to call him a one-trick pony, the one trick he has is an elite trick. That's the one thing about football. There could be certain things. Brock Purdy, he's not the most power thrower in the NFL. But if there's something that he does at a high level, pre-snap, post-snap, understanding what he's seeing, being able to get the ball out, timing and rhythm, and that trick is very, very good. And I think with Deebo Samuel, there's still not another, well, maybe Tyreek Hill, but aside from Tyreek Hill, there's not another receiver I would take over Deebo with the ball in his hands. So the 49ers, they've leaned into that. Just get the ball in his hands in space. Anyway, with quick slants, screens, reverses, handoffs. Anyway, just get the ball in Deebo Samuel's hands and let him do what he does. And you talked about him versus zone. I mean, he's a nightmare versus zone because now you have these concepts from Kyle Shanahan. It's going to clear it out. Deebo's coming across that middle. Don't let the quarterback hit him in stride where he gets to keep running. I mean, he is a load to bring down. So, yeah. Oh, man coverage. He can work more on his hips and move the defensive back. It's like, whatever, Croc. I'm going to catch this ball, and nobody wants to tackle me.
And we keep saying it's like, look, Aiyuk might be a better pure wide receiver, but that doesn't mean he's more valuable than Deebo Samuel, because Deebo Samuel is more unique and maybe harder for Kyle Shanahan to replace. Maybe that's why the 49ers are thinking about, maybe if Aiyuk's asking too much, we get a good return. Maybe we would just roll with Deebo, sign him again to another deal after this one's over, and trade Brandon Aiyuk. Interesting. Okay. But I think they're both going to be around at least for one more season with the 49ers, hopefully. Is the rookie Jacob Cowling now a straight up lock after just one preseason performance? Next. By the way, thanks again, everybody, for making this your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast to get daily insight on the best fantasy draft strategies so you can win your leagues this season. And, of course, the Peacock and Williamson NFL show, myself and former NFL scout Matt Williamson breaking down the entire league daily right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. All right, Croc. Jacob Cowling. He was fun to watch. He was running the ball. He was catching the ball. He looked quick, especially with the unit the 49ers ran out there. Like, he just looked he looked like lightning out there compared to a lot of the players that the 49ers had carrying the football, running the football, catching the football in that preseason game. So I got excited about Jacob Cowling. A lot of 49ers fans did too. And look, he's a 4th round pick, so it would have had to look pretty ugly, and it had to be probably an injury IR situation for him to not really be on the 53-man roster. But after seeing him healthy and seeing him contribute, he's a lock, and I think the 49ers can use him this year.
Just the skill set, I think, is something 49ers has been missing. And, you watch guys like Ray McLeod, and I think people expected maybe he can be that guy. Richie James, I mean, a guy who I thought had, legit ability, potential. Heck, I mean, in one game, we got to see it on full display with 9 catches, 170 yards, and a touchdown against Green Bay during the COVID season. But it never truly took off the way I think maybe some people thought. And I'm not saying that Jacob Cowling's all of a sudden is going to be this all-pro franchise type receiver, but I do think he brings a skill set that 49ers are missing, like just quick twitch, short area, but also has long speed, playmaking ability. He put on full display scoring. I mean, I watched him score 4 touchdowns against USC. This is a guy that was very productive, very good, tested well. So I think the speed is going to help things translate to the NFL. And then we got to watch him do that in the preseason game where, hey, I can catch these quick outs. I can win vertically on double moves. I can take in arounds for 20 yards. There's different ways you could utilize me to at the very least get me involved in the game plan. So if I'm the 49ers, not only is this a guy who clearly, I mean, drafted in the 4th round, you expect him to make the 53. I think this is a guy that's going to have a jersey on game day.
Catching punts cleanly.
Unless he can't block. Sorry, I forgot that part. Well, I haven't watched him block.
All the things he did in that game that were fun, just catching the punt cleanly was the most important thing he could have done, because that's what he needs to do to be on the field, have a jersey, be one of the 46 that suits up on game day. And then if you have a jersey on, now they got to utilize you in the game. If they need wide receiver depth beyond Aiyuk, Deebo Samuel, Juwan Jennings, and who knows, maybe Aiyuk is not signed at that point yet. Maybe Ricky Pearsall's not healthy at that point yet. So maybe Jacob Cowing is all of a sudden one of the top 3, maybe 4 wide receivers, depending on who makes the roster. So it could start to get pretty important pretty quick there with some depth issues. So let's talk about the 53-man roster then, Croc, because I do think Jacob Cowing is a lock at this point, and I can't wait to see him break one of those punts, hopefully. So we'll see. Look, and he's 5'8", 170 pounds. So you're like, slot receiver all day, right? His usage in the, and I don't know what the plans are, but because even if you're playing in the slot, you got to learn the X or the Z position, right? In Kyle Shanahan's offense, he likes receivers to learn all of them. He said Ricky Pearsall could play potentially all of them. Let me get the numbers right. Shout out to Jason Aponte, who posted this today. So Jacob Cowing didn't just line up in the slot. In fact, he mostly lined up outside. He lined up out wide on 28 of his 36 pass snaps and finished with 4 catches for 51 yards, 2 missed tackles forced, 3 first downs, and a contested catch on his only contested target. So that was Jacob Cowing. And I think only 1 target that he did not haul in as well. So 28 of his 36 on the outside was the big thing that stood out to me with that for Jacob Cowing. So not just slot usage in that first preseason game. And he won on the outside.
Right. And if you have speed, so Kyle Shanahan, he answered this question a while ago. Someone asked him, what does it take to be able to play on the outside in the NFL? And he said, you just have to be able to win vertically. Now, people do that different ways. You have some guys that win vertically with speed. You have some guys that can win vertically with size. And clearly, Cowing is showing the ability to win vertically with speed. He wouldn't be the first person that's skinny, but still able to win vertically down the field. We have one guy that's doing it very well right now, Devontae Smith. He lines up all over, but he can win outside because he can win with his speed. Deshaun Jackson, one of the greatest deep ball threats that definitely of my generation. And he was 170 pounds, and he was able to win downfield. Wasn't the biggest guy, but he was able to win with speed. So you don't have to be Calvin Johnson. You don't have to be Julio Jones. You can be a guy that just has speed. I think that's one thing with the 49ers receivers, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Aiyuk. It was better last year for Aiyuk for sure, and maybe that's a Brock Purdy effect. But between Deebo and Aiyuk, that hasn't been a big part of the game, and partly because it's not like they're these like pure burners vertically, and then they're not the biggest of guys. It's not like they have huge catch radiuses or that they're just jumping out the gym to bounce up and catch balls. So I keep bringing up Tyreek Hill, but Tyreek Hill is a guy who you could throw the ball in the air and somehow he just figures out a way to come down with it. I've seen him jump over pretty much any type of defensive back. 49ers haven't shown that like Aiyuk is quite that, and we've seen him make plays, but has he been that consistent? Just no matter what, just throw it up in the area, I'm going to come down with it. Not quite. And Deebo, he hasn't quite been that guy either. And that's not to say that at times they can't win vertically. We've seen it. Chicago Bears game. He ran a big post downfield right before halftime. Remember that? There was another time Detroit Lions threw the defensive back off him. Caught it. I think it was Jeffrey Okuda's rookie year and ran in for a touchdown. So we've seen it, but it hasn't been something that has been a big part of their game because I don't know if that's necessarily where their skill set really thrives. And maybe a guy like Cowing brings that element of, hey, I do have 4.3 speed, whether I'm on the outside or in the slot. I definitely can stretch the field and be more of usage to you or value to you than maybe what you thought you were getting from Danny Gray.
So Aiyuk a lock, obviously, if he finally signs his deal and is ready to go by week 1. Deebo Samuel's a lock. Juwan Jennings is a lock as the number 3 wide receiver. Those are your starters. Then you got the first rounder and Ricky Pearsall, if he's healthy and not on an injured list, is a lock. And Jacob Cowing now we have decided is also a lock. That's 5. The Niners usually break with no more than 6 wide receivers, Croc. So what skill set is needed as the 6th wide receiver, especially if Jacob Cowing shows he can catch a punt? Do you still take the veteran in Trent Taylor? It's one of Kyle's boys. He drafted him in 2017. Trent Taylor doesn't obviously have a lot of size. He doesn't have a lot of speed down the field, and really running the whip route in the preseason game, he didn't really look like he had all the quicks that he used to have either, as that like third down little jitterbug slot monster that he was for the 49ers. Can still catch a punt, but man, as long as Cowing can catch a punt, I don't see how you need Trent Taylor still on the roster. So he would be out for me. Ronnie Bell just hasn't had a great camp or preseason, and he was kind of a bubble guy anyway. He's not a return guy. So that would point to maybe one of Chris Connolly. There's Tay Martin. You got Robbie Chosen in the mix, who wasn't in the preseason game, so I don't know what to expect about him, what he brings. Was he just like a break in case of emergency signing for the 49ers? You got Danny Gray as well, who, man, it's going to be real tough for him to make the team at this point. John Trey Kirkin is somebody who's apparently on the roster that I don't remember seeing out there. T.O.'s kid got an injury settlement, so he's gone, so he's not fighting for a roster spot currently. Who's the sixth guy for you? How would you rank those guys with like Connolly, Bell, Tay Martin, Trent Taylor, Robbie Chosen? How would you rank those guys in who could and who should make the roster? Especially if someone like maybe Aiyuk's not around or Ricky Pearsall's not around. You might need that X receiver. You might need someone who has that skill set to play on the outside.
You know, as long as Aiyuk signs, they're not looking for a guy that's going to be super impactful at the receiver spot. So obviously you want guys that are doing the right things, but who brings the most special teams value? So I think, you know, right away you go to Ronnie Bell. Well, but have you seen him do anything that maybe you can or can't get from Jacob Cowing? So now you start to think like, all right, is there a guy who can make a difference being a gunner? And, you know, I think we all watched the Super Bowl and it really stands out, you know, what Chris Conley.
Chris Conley.
I want to say Chris Owens for whatever reason. Who the hell is Chris Owens? Defensive back, San Jose State. Went to the Falcons years ago. All right, I don't know why that name popped up. But Chris Conley, you know, in the Super Bowl, it stood out just his value as a gunner on special teams. And this is a guy that wasn't active all year, bounced around on the practice squad for the 49ers, between practice squad and active roster. But he showed, hey, I have value as a gunner. So can Trent Taylor, can Ronnie Bell, Tay Martin, any of these guys show more value than Chris Conley as a gunner? And Chris Conley also showed, hey, in a pinch, if need be, and he did this in the postseason, I can catch a deep out route. He did it in like some key moments too.
Yeah, he's solid. Surprising, like, dude, Chris Conley. People probably forget coming out of the draft. He was drafted by the Kansas City Chiefs, I think, in the high third round range. He was 6'2", 213 pounds, ran a 4.35, and had a 45-inch vertical. He was a freak of nature coming out of college, out of Georgia. He was never like the reason, and you think, oh, how did he not go in the first round with those measurables? He's never been like just a hugely productive guy, but coaches love him. He's a good special teams player, and he's a veteran that can come in and play. And so to me, the answer is easily Chris Conley out of all those guys is the sixth, and he might have a bigger role than being the sixth wide receiver too.
Do you know what year he was drafted? Was it 17?
He's already 30 years old, so it was like 2015, I think. 2016.
I remember him. I want to say preseason game, Kyle Shanahan's first year. So this was Patrick Mahomes' rookie year, and he caught a deep ball on Rashard Robinson in the preseason down the right sideline. I think Tyreek Hill caught one, and he caught one, I believe.
2015 draft, third round pick. Yeah.
So, 2 years later. But, yeah, he was a guy that possessed speed. And I think Jacksonville paid him to kind of be a bigger part of their offense, but it just never kind of like really took off.
Yeah, he's never taken off as like a true big-time starter. He has 31 years old now. He's Chris Conley. But I heard him talk the other day, and it's just like, man, I like that guy. He's got value. He can play. You could start him if you need to on the outside. He's a good special teams gunner. I mean, what more you want? I think that's more.
Now he's not a Brandon Aiyuk replacement at the X receiver, but again, like when you say start, it's kind of like Josh Dobbs. Like, can Josh Dobbs start a game for you? Like, yeah. Do you want Josh Dobbs starting all season? No. Ideally not.
Yeah, exactly. And Danny Gray with all the speed he has, I mean, already Jacob Cowing made more plays in one preseason game than Danny Gray's ever made in all of his preseason, all of his regular games, all the practices I've seen him play. Right?
He did catch the one bomb from Trey Lance.
When was that? Was that preseason or was that?
It was preseason against the Green Bay Packers.
Right. Okay.
Slot fade, caught the safety flat-footed. But in this game, in one of the clutcher moments. He did catch a pass, but he double caught it. And anytime I see something like that, like where it should be routine, I'm just thinking it's a guy that potentially is in his own head. And when you look at when he got in the game, other guys were in Trent Taylor, Chris Conley, Ronnie Bell, Tay Martin, like all these other guys are in over him. And then finally Gray has an opportunity to kind of get in there. And even then, it didn't feel like he was the guy that was always on the field. So he could potentially be in someone's doghouse and double catching a pass that would likely is supposed to be more routine for these NFL receivers. That's probably not going to help.
All right, so that's our 6. We're totally in agreement. It's Aiyuk and Samuel and Jennings and Pearsall and Cowing and Chris Conley. Those are the 6 wide receivers you break camp with, and then see if you get Tay Martin back on the practice squad once again. I mean, I don't know if it's going to happen. This is what year 3 for him, right? Trent Taylor, one of the veterans you could bring back. The one guy I don't know what to think about is Robbie Chosen. And I think he might be just complete Brandon Aiyuk insurance. If something happens and Aiyuk is not ready to go, they have to bring someone like Robbie Chosen along for the season. So maybe that's what the thought is with Robbie Chosen. I want to see him in that 3rd preseason game, though, just to see what he looks like out there. Wearing number 7, by the way.
Yeah.
That's it for us. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We love our everydayers. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on YouTube or wherever you listen to this podcast. Croc and I back tomorrow right here, Locked On 49ers.
Subscribe to this video.